Hi and welcome to Chris Ryan Golf. We are once again in the Talamo Performance Centre here at the Belfry, and in this video we're looking at the over the top move, and we're asking, are you over the top, and maybe looking at a different way of approaching it, and maybe looking at some of the things you need to do to try and fix it. Now, just before we do that, please make sure you go ahead and follow me on my social media platforms. You've got Facebook, you've got Twitter and Instagram. Those details hopefully should be in the corner of the screen about now. You can connect with me via any of those. Right, so over the top, we're going to discuss it. We're going to look at maybe what you think is over the top and maybe what is over the top, and then, as I say, we're going to go through a couple of things that you might need to do in your golf swing to help you hit better golf shots. So just initially, we're going to get rid of that golf club, okay? And I'm going to take my setup here. I've got an alignment stick. Well, it's actually a club shaft, but you can use an alignment stick just on the floor, just to represent my ball to target line. And I'm going to take a starting position as if I've got a mid-iron, okay? So what I want you to do here is I want you to look at the movement of my hands as I make a rehearsal backswing and a rehearsal downswing, okay? Right, so if I were to do this, okay? Now, if I was to do a poll and say, is that underplaying, overplaying, on-playing, whatever it may be, I would suggest that the majority of people watching this video would suggest that's overplaying, over the top, okay? Because what we saw there is, you can see the line I've drawn there, my hands are working up on a certain sort of path, if you like, or plane, and then from the top they're moving over that plane and they're working back down here. So the movement of the hands on the way down was certainly more out than it was on the way back, okay? Now, if we bring the golf club in, okay, what you would find, if you were to study the golf swings of some of the best players that play the game today and have played the game in the past, the movement I just demonstrated with the hands would be very, very common in many, many golfers. Those golfers, however, many of those will hit the ball on a right to left draw ball flight, okay? Now, the movement I made there was maybe a little bit more exaggerated than what you'd see in reality, but it was just more so you can see the difference. But if we just take the hands moving up on a certain plane and then down on a slightly more outward plane is very, very common, okay? So what we just did there as a demonstration without the golf club would possibly have looked over the top. Now, if I were to do the same demonstration with a golf club, okay, I'm going to try and move my hands in the same fashion I just did. I'm going to try and move them up on a certain plane. I'm going to try and move them down on a more outward plane, okay? So, just want you to watch this. I'll try this relatively slow, okay? So the hands are coming up, okay? And then as I start down, the hands are going to go a lot more out, okay? Okay, and then I could swing through, okay? So again, that was a little bit more over-exaggerated, but the hands moved on the same sort of trace, if you like, as I did previously. What you will, however, hopefully notice is that the golf club head moved very, very differently, okay? So what I just did there was I created a backswing where the hands were more inwards, but the club head is more out, and then as I got to the top, I changed over. My hands were more outwards, and the club was more inwards. So if I said to a golfer, just keep your eye on the club head, would be that overplaying or underplaying? They would possibly say the opposite. They would say, well, it was more underplaying. So what we've got here is we've got the hands working what maybe people would term as overplaying, and you've got the club head working more underplaying. So what would that golf swing be classed as? Well, what we would often find is that it's quite common for golfers to move the hands up on a certain path, but the hands will move slightly outwards on the way down. This movement is absolutely fine. And in fact, it is something that I would tend to encourage. I would tend to want the hands to move on the way down slightly more out towards the golf ball than they were on the way back. What is absolutely key, however, is that the golf club shaft stays in a good position. Many of you out there who are struggling with an over the top, with a slice, with a pull, with a weak shot, it will not be because the hands are moving this way. It will be, as the hands are moving that way, you're beginning to tip the golf club and steepen the club shaft too much, too early into that downswing. So your arms are beginning to rotate to the left too soon into the downswing, okay? Those golfers, if you fall into that category, for you, it is feeling as if you're almost trying to rotate your arms to the right as you start down, okay? So my hands are still moving outwards, as you can see, but the flattening of the club shaft with my arms is causing the club to be delivered from actually what is a pretty good position. From here, my hands are definitely more outwards than they were in my backswing, but I can turn through and hit a nice straight shot, even a right to left shot. The purpose of this video is to get a point across that if you feel you're over the top, what you do not really want to be doing is from the top trying to feel as if you're pulling your hands more down. Because very often when I see or I talk to people about the over the top move, they often relate that more to the hands. They say to me, oh, I'm doing this, I'm throwing over, okay? Often the movement of the hands or the hand path is not the problem. It's the rotation of the arms, which either keeps the club in a nice position or it starts to steepen the club too much, okay? So if you feel you're over the top, try to think a little bit more about the rotation of the arms and the angle of the golf club as opposed to the movement of your hands, okay? The grip of the golf club moving up and slightly over is fine. I want you to feel as if your right elbow is pushing more in. So there's more rotation of that right arm, which is causing the club to lay down. And we can start to feel like we get the club into this position here, and then we can start to swing through. Okay? People swinging left of target is still possibly one of the most common faults that we see. It is generally considered over the top. You know, that's the term that gets thrown around a lot. The purpose of this video was to sort of suggest that maybe the term over the top isn't as well understood as people would hopefully believe. There are different types of over the top, okay? We need to understand what you're doing and how we need to try and fix that issue. Okay, right, let me hit a couple of shots and then we'll finish up the video. Just got a 7-iron here. Okay, so if you were to look at my golf swing in slow motion, I'll actually put one up on the screen here for you. I always hit the ball on the right to left ball flight. I really struggle to fade the ball. So when I play well, I get a nice, couple of yards of draw. But whatever I'm doing, it's always moving right to left. Very rarely do I fade the ball or slice the ball. What you will see on this video is my hands absolutely will work more over on the way down. So if you were to just look at the movement of my hands, it would be classed as an over the top move. But I never ever hit that ball flight that would relate to an over the top move. Okay, so hopefully that made a bit more sense. Hopefully it clears up a few things. It maybe will give you a little bit of a different way of approaching your next practice session. Maybe start to think about the rotation of the arms as opposed to where the hands are going, and that will hopefully help you hit some straighter shots out on the golf course. Okay, thanks very much for watching. The like button down there and the comments box, you know what to do with those. And there is also a link to a subscription page which will help you make sure you don't miss any of the content on my channel. Okay, so thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again next time.